The Onondaga County Legislature this afternoon, on the first day of Black History Month, condemned the actions of the original governing body of Onondaga County. Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Coleman.
I'm Matt Mulcahy. Digging into the founding actions of Onondaga County, we uncovered a past more commonly associated with states in the South. One of the earliest documented acts of the newly formed Onondaga County was to establish a fair assessment of property. Right in the middle of the list of barn animals and farm equipment, the taxable value of enslaved people here in central New York. This is the latest in our ongoing series, The Map, Segregated Syracuse. At the end of the Revolutionary War, the newly formed United States divvied up the land taken from the Native Americans. The Central New York military tract was surveyed and given to men of rank who served the Continental Army. By 1794, more than 1,000 settlers had moved into the newly formed Onondaga County. In December of 1795, the county needed tax dollars and a fair way to assess property value. The Board of Supervisors met and approved a list. The money was still British pounds sterling. 16 pounds per yoke of working oxen, cows of a medium quality, 5 pounds, cattle, horses, a line that just is routine in their business. Negro men, 50 pounds per head. Negro wenches, 30 pounds per head. The men who set these values were businessmen and farmers on the initial Board of Supervisors of Onondaga County. Linda Irvin is one of two people of color who sits on the successor body, the Onondaga County Legislature. Well, what was your reaction when I sent that to you and you saw it?
During slavery, there was a price, and we weren't considered to be human. We were considered to be, sold like anything else. We were sold like any other item of the person's belongings, which is awful. But to see it in an act at the legislature, well, not legislative supervisors back then, it makes it really even seem like, oh my God, and how much different is it now?
Charles Garland represents Syracuse's South Side.
That was what was accepted then at that time. It's unfortunate and sad, but once again, we're acknowledging it right now, and that's the first step, acknowledging it and addressing it.
Bishop Bernard Alex shares the pain of knowing the county's founding fathers accepted slavery in the towns where we still live today.
Shows that Onondaga County, upstate New York, also operated in this same paradigm of people being seen as chattel, as a part of the equality to a sawmill and animals, and it just resonates very deeply, particularly in knowing that I drive through those towns and villages, and that a part of their legacy would not have seen me as a person, but as a piece of property.
The Onondaga Historical Association says few people in Onondaga County are aware of the county government's role in perpetuating slavery in those early years. The clerk who signed off on the record in 1795, Comfort Tyler. He is revered as an historic figure as a founder of Onondaga County. A pyramid marks his burial site in Oakwood Cemetery, and a Syracuse park bears his name, with no mention of the value assessed on enslaved people as an early official act of Onondaga County. Well, after we brought the document to members of the legislature, they immediately worked to get it on today's docket so they could discuss it and vote on whether the county would formally condemn the actions of its predecessors in county government. Our Allura Lagarde is live in Syracuse tonight after covering that meeting this afternoon. Allura.
Matt, it is the first day of Black History Month, and at first it wasn't clear if this motion to condemn systemic racism in Onondaga County would even make it to the legislators' agenda. Now, Matt and Megan, it did, and it passed. Legislator Linda Irvin proposed this motion to memorialize resolutions celebrating Black history and condemning racism in our history. She did this after our investigation discovered the 1795 document that places value on property, which included slaves. This motion formally condemns racism. Irvin and fellow legislator Charles Garland, who represents the south side of Syracuse, stood up and spoke today. They urged their peers to pass it, which happened unanimously, with two legislators not present. But they were met with some pushback from the chairman. Here's what he had to say.
Our work as legislators should not be about accusing one another. Our work should not be about dismissing one another. To truly make progress, we need to acknowledge not only the bad and the ugly, but the good and the redemptive as well.
This resolution was made to correct a wrong, and that's why it was put forth. It was not unilateral. It was unfortunately very quickly handled because it came to us very quickly, and we did the best we could to get it to everybody's hands as quickly as we could.
Now, even though this motion was passed, there is still more work to be done, and Irvin says that they will work on moving this forward.
New tonight, a new resolution in Onondaga County, which just passed today. It's bringing to light the disturbing truth about systemic racism in our local history. Last February, we introduced you to our investigative reporting series, The Map, which looks at redlining and institutionalized racism in the city of Syracuse. Interstate 81 became a physical marker of the divide between white and minority neighborhoods. But tonight's investigation goes back a lot further than that. Back in the 1790s, when the County Board of Supervisors compiled a list of property and attached a value to each item. On that list were human beings, men and women up for sale as slaves, alongside livestock and farm equipment. Here's a look at the page that we uncovered. You can see the prices listed. Some of the language is tough. A man selling for as much as a grist mill, a woman selling for as much as a sawmill would be worth. The County Board of Supervisors that published that page was the predecessor of today's Onondaga County Legislature. 17 members of that body voted today to condemn those board members from long ago for blatant support of slavery and racism. Matt Mulcahy has been spearheading this reporting. He's in with us tonight to break down what it means. Matt, what is this old document that we're looking at there? What was its purpose?
Well, Michael, this was 1795. Onondaga County had been founded just the year before. So the county was setting up how does government work. And to have a working government, you need money. To get money, you need taxation. To tax, you need to assess something. You need to assess property and give it value. So that's what they did here in this meeting, which was actually in the town of Scipio, which is now Cayuga County, but was part of Onondaga County in that day. And they put a price on the obvious things. Property, the land, horses, farm equipment, a grist mill, a sawmill. But what really stands out in this historically is that they put a value on, quote, Negro men and, quote, Negro wenches at 50 pounds British sterling and 30 pounds British sterling, respectively. In other words, they acknowledged that it was accepted practice to have a value given on property, which we now would call enslaved people of that day.
So this could live in history where very few people know it even exists. When you found it, what did you do?
Well, I found it, and I talked with Bob Searing from the Onondaga Historical Association, who acknowledged that this is not something that's commonly known. In fact, he said, off the top of his head, he didn't know of anybody else who had discovered this information, although he was aware of it. It sits within the history of Onondaga County. Now, I shared that information with Onondaga County legislator Linda Irvin and got her reaction to what it felt like to see and hear those words.
During slavery, there was a price, and we weren't considered to be human. We were considered to be, sold like anything else. We were sold like any other item of the person's belongings, which is awful. But to see it in an act at the legislature, well, not legislature, supervisors back then, it makes it really even seem like, oh my God. And how much different is it now?
So what happened today, Matt? What happened downtown in Syracuse in the legislative chambers?
Well, this all moved very quickly. From late last week when Linda Irvin and I had that conversation, she got in touch with fellow elected leaders that are African American, and they decided collectively that they wanted to take action quickly, partly because today is the first day of Black History Month, an appropriate time to acknowledge an event and an action like this. But she didn't want it to get lost in Black history. She wanted to be acting swiftly and also very clearly that the Onondaga County Legislature as a body is repudiating or distancing itself from the acts of the Board of Supervisors in 1795. Michael, keep in mind that most of us growing up, going to school, we learned that slavery is in the South. In the North was where free people were. But we forget, or maybe we just weren't taught, that up until 1827 in New York State, slavery was still legal, and at the founding moments of Onondaga County, it very much was in play.
It's right there in black and white, quite literally. They say the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. So I guess I'm curious about what today's repudiation of that gross part of history from way back when. What does it set the table for?
Well, we don't know
moving
yet.
forward.
We don't know yet. But what we do know is that other communities, in fact, there has been national conversation about whether reparations are appropriate when something like this arises. And now that there is a record of the Government Act, it has become public knowledge that there was a government action that condoned slavery in that time. The next conversation could be, now what do we do? Do we simply educate the community, or perhaps something more tangible, a conversation about reparations? State legislatures expected to approve plans for new congressional districts, but some are wondering why certain voting blocks have been drawn the way they are. Good evening. I'm Matt Mulcahy.
And I'm Megan Coleman. One of the most talked about changes is what would be New York's 24th district. The proposed district would no longer include Onondaga County. It would cover parts of Cayuga, Wayne, Oswego, Jefferson, and Seneca counties, just to name a few. It's about 260 miles if you drive it from end to end. Tony Black is live in Sandy Creek after asking local folks how they feel about this new wide-reaching district. Tony?
Yeah, man, Megan, voters here in Oswego County are about smack dab in the middle of what could become a very massive 24th congressional district. They would vote for the same member of Congress as people 60 miles north in Jefferson County and about 200 miles away over in western New York. And leaders in both parts are wondering how one person can fairly represent all of them.
It'd be so big, that how are you going to represent all them people?
The proposed 24th congressional district would include voters from Niagara County, along the coast of Lake Ontario, up to Jefferson County. Voters in northern Oswego County would no longer be in the 22nd district.
We're a small rural area, and we just want a small district that keeps us in mind and looks out for us.
Lacona Village Mayor Lyndon Glazier thinks the district would be too big. He wants it to stay as is, concerned about fair representation in the U.S. House of Representatives.
We're down-home farmers and, workers and the simple life people, and we're nowhere near what they are out that way.
The district would include parts of more than a dozen counties. One of them is Niagara County.
It's a tough district to ask a congressman to cover, even if you decided to live somewhere in the middle.
Town of Lewiston Supervisor Steve Broderick says people in the western part of the state have different concerns than people in central or northern New York. The one similarity is that they are mostly coastal communities along the shores of Lake Ontario. While the district would be red, Broderick still doesn't think everyone would be fairly represented.
I just think it's not fair to the people or fair to the congressman to try and cover that kind of a territory.
And I walked around the town of Sandy Creek today asking voters for their thoughts on the proposals. And Matt and Megan, it was a little bit of everything. You had people who really didn't care which congressional district they were a part of. You had people who liked the current congressional districts and other ones who really didn't mind if it did change. And as you mentioned, this has to get passed by both the state assembly and state senate, both of which are Democrat controlled. So if that's passed, it's possible that House Republicans could lose 3 seats in the November election.